Help me, please! Can you take me to hospital?
Can you take me to the hospital? Poor abandoned wife in labor begged, unaware he was a Korean mafia boss. Please. Can you take me to the hospital? The words tore from Amina's throat as she crumpled against a rusted street pole, one hand gripping her swollen belly while the other reached out blindly into the afternoon chaos. People glanced once, then looked away. A woman crossed the road, pulling her child closer. A man frowned as if her pain were blocking his path. She didn't know the stranger who would stop for her. She didn't know his name carried weight in rooms where men whispered and trembled. She didn't know that his hands, scarred and steady, had built an empire in the shadows. To her, he was simply someone who hadn't walked away yet. But sometimes the person who saves you is the most dangerous man in the city. And sometimes a moment of desperation on a broken street becomes the beginning of something neither mercy nor power can control. Because the man in the white suit, the one who crouched beside her, who said, "I've got you," in a voice that made fear pause, wasn't just a stranger. He was Yi Jun. A ghost. A king. A man whose next decision would shatter both their worlds. Sometimes kindness is the most dangerous thing you can offer. And sometimes it's the only thing that matters. Hello family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that deserve to be heard, stories that refuse to be silenced. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together, we're not just telling stories. We're keeping hope alive. The pain hit Amina without warning. One moment she was standing on the cracked sidewalk, gripping the strap of her worn handbag, and the next she was doubled over, breath tearing from her throat as a sharp contraction ripped through her belly. Her knees buckled. She reached out and caught herself against the pole, sweat already slick on her palms. Please. She whispered. The afternoon street was loud with life, honking cars, music spilling from a shop, people arguing over prices, but none of it slowed for her. She slid down until she was sitting on the pavement, one hand clutching her stomach, the other stretched out toward the passing crowd. Please, can someone take me to the hospital? Her voice cracked. The baby kicked hard, as if urging her to survive. 8 months pregnant. Abandoned by Sadiq 3 weeks earlier after an argument about money. He'd called her too weak, said the pregnancy had ruined everything. Promised to return before the baby arrived. He never did. Another contraction came, stronger this time. Tears streamed down her face as she cried out. Still, no one stopped. That was when the black sedan rolled slowly to the curb. The door opened, and a man stepped out, tall, sharply dressed in a white suit that looked wildly out of place on that broken street. His hair was neatly styled, his expression controlled, eyes scanning the scene with quiet intensity. He walked toward her with purpose, not pity. Please, Amina sobbed, reaching out. I'm in labor. I can't get there alone. Yi Jun stopped in front of her. For a long second, he said nothing. His dark eyes studied her torn dress, her trembling hands, the raw fear etched across her face. Then he crouched down. Can you stand? He asked, his voice low and calm. Amina nodded weakly. Her world was narrowing to pain and breath, but his steadiness cut through it. Yi Jun offered his hand. His grip was firm, anchoring her as another wave of pain tore through her body. She cried out, fingers digging into his sleeve. It's okay, he said quietly. I've got you. He helped her into the car himself, closing the door gently before sliding into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life. As they sped toward the hospital, Amina clutched the seatbelt, breathing hard. My name is Amina, she managed. Thank you so much. Yi Jun, he replied. She noticed his hands on the wheel, scarred knuckles, controlled movements. A man used to danger. But his voice when he spoke again was gentle. You're doing well. Stay with me. Another contraction hit. She screamed. Yi Jun didn't flinch. He just drove faster, his jaw set, his focus absolute. They reached the hospital just in time. Nurses rushed her inside as Yi Jun followed, barking orders in clipped tones that made staff move without questioning why. Hours later, when Amina woke exhausted and shaking, her baby boy crying softly in her arms, Yi Jun was gone. He had paid the bills anonymously. Left no name. Disappeared like smoke. Amina would later learn why. And she would learn that sometimes the man who saves your life is the same man who will have to decide if he can protect it from what comes next. The trouble began 2 days later. But first, there was the drive. Inside the car, Amina's world contracted to pain and breath. The contractions came faster now, each one a fist tightening around her spine. She pressed her forehead against the cool window, trying to find something solid to hold on to. Breathe through it, Yi Jun said, his voice cutting through the panic. In through your nose. Out through your mouth. She obeyed without thinking. His tone left no room for argument, not harsh, but absolute. The kind of voice that had shaped men into soldiers, that had commanded rooms where weakness meant death. But Amina didn't know that. She only knew his voice was the only thing keeping her from screaming. Between contractions, she studied him. The way his hands gripped the wheel, precise, controlled, like violence held in check. His knuckles were scarred, the kind of marks that came from breaking things. Or people. His posture was military straight, his jaw set in concentration that seemed too practiced for a man simply driving to a hospital. You've done this before, she managed, her voice shaking. Done what? Stayed calm when everything's falling apart. Something flickered across his face. Not quite a smile. Not quite pain. It's a skill you learn, he said quietly. The city blurred past. He ran 2 red lights without hesitation, taking corners with the precision of someone who knew exactly how far he could push before losing control. Another contraction hit. This one stole her breath entirely. She gripped the door handle, a broken sound escaping her throat. Yi Jun's hand left the wheel for just a second, touched her shoulder, steady and warm. Almost there. You're stronger than you think. The words landed somewhere deep. She wanted to believe him. They pulled into the emergency bay, and Yi Jun was out of the car before it fully stopped. He opened her door, helped her onto the stretcher that appeared as if summoned. 8 months pregnant, contractions 2 minutes apart, he told the nurses, his tone clipped and commanding. She needs a room. Now. The staff moved. Not because they knew who he was, but because something in his presence demanded obedience. A nurse started to ask questions, and Yi Jun's eyes went cold. Now, he repeated. They moved faster. Amina was rushed through sliding doors, lights overhead blurring into white streaks. Monitors beeped. Hands checked her vitals. Voices overlapped with medical terms she couldn't follow. But through it all, she saw him. Yi Jun standing in the corner, arms crossed, watching everything with the intensity of a man guarding something precious. He didn't speak unless spoken to. Didn't interfere. But his presence alone seemed to make the room work harder, move faster. The labor was brutal. Hours stretched into an eternity of pain that eclipsed thought. Amina screamed until her throat was raw. Cried until she had no tears left. The world narrowed to survival, to the primal, terrifying work of bringing life into a world that had already tried to break her. And through it all, Yi Jun stayed. Not beside her. He knew his place. But close enough that when her eyes found him through the haze of pain, he was there. Solid. Unmoved. You're almost done, the doctor said. One more push. Amina didn't think she had it in her. But she saw Yi Jun nod once, just once, and somehow, she found the strength. The baby's cry split the air. A boy. Small, red-faced, furious at the world he'd just entered. Amina sobbed, relief and love and exhaustion pouring out in waves she couldn't control. They placed him on her chest, and she felt whole for the first time in months. When she finally looked up to thank Yi Jun, the corner where he'd stood was empty. She woke hours later to silence. The hospital room was dim, machines beeping softly. Her son slept in a bassinet beside her bed, tiny fists curled beneath his chin. A nurse smiled when she saw Amina stirring. You did beautifully, she said. And don't worry about the bills, they've been taken care of. By who? The nurse hesitated. He didn't leave a name. Just said to make sure you and the baby had everything you needed. Amina's chest tightened. She looked at her son, safe, breathing, alive, and felt the weight of a debt she didn't know how to repay. She didn't even know his last name. But Yijun was already gone, disappearing into the city like he'd never been there at all. And Amina had no idea that the man who saved her life had just made the most dangerous decision of his own. Because in his world, mercy was a weakness. And weakness got you killed. The apartment was too quiet without anyone to share it with. Amina learned quickly that newborns don't sleep the way people say they do. Her son, she'd named him Rafiq, meaning companion, woke every 2 hours, crying with a hunger that felt endless. She fed him, changed him, rocked him until her arms ached. The walls pressed in close. The sink filled with dishes she was too exhausted to wash. But she was happy. For 3 days, she existed in a small, fragile bubble of peace. Just her and Rafiq. No one asking questions. No one making her feel small. Then Sadiq came back. She heard his key in the lock just after midnight. The sound made her stomach drop. She'd been half asleep on the couch, Rafiq finally quiet in her arms, and suddenly her husband was standing in the doorway. He looked thinner. Smelled like alcohol and cigarettes. His eyes swept the apartment with the cold assessment of someone cataloging evidence. So you had it, he said flatly. Not him. It. Amina tightened her hold on Rafiq. His name is Rafiq. Sadiq grunted. He dropped his bag on the floor and walked to the kitchen, opening the fridge like he owned the place. Which, technically, he did, his name was on the lease. You look tired, he said, not looking at her. I just gave birth 3 days ago. He pulled out a beer, cracked it open. How'd you pay for it? The question landed like a slap. I didn't, Amina said carefully. Someone helped me. Sadiq turned, eyes narrowing. Someone. A stranger. I was in labor on the street, and he drove me to the hospital. He. Sadiq's jaw clenched. He crossed the room slowly, stopping just close enough to make her feel cornered without actually touching her. What stranger? I don't know. He didn't tell me much. He just. Just what? Paid thousands in medical bills out of kindness? His voice dripped with sarcasm. Men don't do that, Amina. Not unless they want something. He didn't want anything. He left before I could even thank him properly. Sadiq stared at her, and she saw it, the thing she'd always feared in him. The insecurity that curdled into cruelty. The jealousy that made him rewrite reality into something uglier. What did he look like? Sadiq asked quietly. I was in pain, I barely remember. What? Did he look like? Amina's throat tightened. Tall. Well-dressed. He had a black car. Something shifted in Sadiq's expression. His eyes went distant for a moment, like he was calculating something. A black sedan, he pressed. I think so. Why does it matter? Sadiq didn't answer. He just drank his beer, staring at her like she'd betrayed him somehow. Like her survival was an insult. You expect me to believe some random rich guy just helps a pregnant woman in the street, he said finally. You think I'm stupid? I'm not lying. Then what aren't you telling me? His voice rose. Rafiq stirred in her arms, letting out a small cry. Amina stood, cradling her son protectively. Nothing. There's nothing to tell. But Sadiq wasn't listening anymore. He was pacing now, muttering to himself. She caught fragments, black sedan, white suit, hospital. His face had gone pale, then flushed with something between fear and opportunity. He pulled out his phone, started scrolling. His fingers moved fast, searching something. Sadiq, what are you doing? Making sure we're safe, he said, but the way he said it made her skin crawl. Safe from what? Or safe from who? That night, Sadiq slept on the couch. Amina locked the bedroom door and held Rafiq close, listening to her husband's voice through the walls as he made phone calls that stretched past 3 a.m. She couldn't hear the words. But she heard the tone, eager, hungry, calculated. And she realized with cold certainty that the stranger's kindness hadn't saved her. It had marked her. Because Sadiq recognized something. Remembered something. And whatever he was planning, it had nothing to do with protecting his family. Outside, the city slept. But inside that apartment, a man was laying groundwork for a betrayal that would cost more than he could imagine. And somewhere across town, Yi Jun's phone was already ringing with warnings he didn't want to hear. Yi Jun didn't do guilt. Guilt was for men who made mistakes. Men who let emotions dictate decisions. Men who ended up bleeding out in alleys because they hesitated half a second too long. He'd built his empire on the bones of men like that. So when Jihan placed the tablet on the conference table, security footage cued to the moment Yi Jun's face appeared outside the hospital entrance, Yi Jun's expression didn't change. 15 cameras caught you, Jihan said quietly. He was the oldest of Yi Jun's lieutenants, scarred and steady, a man who'd killed his first target at 16. Hospital security, traffic cams, a convenience store across the street. Sung Hyun leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Younger, sharper-edged, always looking for the angle. The footage is circulating. Low-level gangs are asking questions. Rivals are watching. Dong-wook, the silent one, just watched Yi Jun with those flat, calculating eyes. He didn't need to speak. His presence said enough. This is a problem. The room they sat in was elegant in its brutality, sleek furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, art on the walls worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. This was where decisions were made that shaped the underworld. Where territories were carved up. Where lives were ended with a signature. Yi Jun pressed play. On the screen, he watched himself help a pregnant woman into his car. Watched himself drive away. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Clear enough to be weaponized. Who's the woman? Sung Hyun asked. No one, Yi Jun said. His voice was flat, final. No one? Sung Hyun's eyebrow raised. You stopped a meeting with the Yakuza for no one? Yi Jun's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Jihan noticed. He always noticed. She was in labor on the street, Yi Jun said. I drove her to a hospital. That's all. That's all, Dong-wook repeated, his first words of the meeting. He made it sound like an accusation. Jihan leaned forward. The problem isn't what you did. It's what people will think you did. Weakness. Distraction. Sentiment. He paused. Our enemies don't care about context. Then our enemies are fools. Fools with resources, Sung Hyun countered. 3 suppliers have already delayed shipments. Testing boundaries. Seeing if you've gone soft. Yi Jun's knuckles whitened where his fist rested on the table. Just slightly. Just enough. I am not soft. Then prove it, Sung Hyun said. Distance yourself. Publicly. Make it clear she's nothing. The word landed wrong. Nothing. Yi Jun's mind flashed to her face, tear-streaked, terrified, reaching out when no one else would stop. The way she gripped his sleeve like he was the only solid thing left in her world. The sound of her son's first cry. Nothing. Already done, Yi Jun said. I paid the bills anonymously. Left no trail. It's finished. Jihan studied him with those weathered, knowing eyes. Is it? The silence stretched. Yi Jun stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced precision. Increase patrols in the Eastern District. Remind our suppliers that delays have consequences. And pull those surveillance files. I want them scrubbed by morning. And the woman? Dong-wook asked. Yi Jun moved toward the door. She doesn't exist. But his hand hesitated on the handle. Just a fraction of a second. Jihan saw it. After Yi Jun left, the 3 lieutenants sat in weighted silence. He's lying, Sung Hyun said finally. He's compromised, Dongwook corrected. Jihan tapped the tablet thoughtfully. He's conflicted. Which might be more dangerous? What do we do? We watch, Jihan said. And we prepare for the moment his conscience tries to overrule his survival instincts. He powered off the screen. Because in our world, that moment gets you killed. Late that night, alone in his penthouse, Yi Jun stood at the window overlooking the city. Glass of whiskey in hand, untouched. His phone showed a report he'd commissioned, discreetly, through channels even Jihan didn't know about. Subject, Amina Hassan. Age 26. Married to Sadiq Hassan. Newborn son, healthy. Discharged from hospital 2 days ago. Currently residing at. He should delete it. He should burn every trace of this distraction. Instead, he read it again. Yi Jun had built his life on control. On calculated risk. On the absolute certainty that emotion was a luxury men like him couldn't afford. But somewhere in the back of his mind, he could still hear her voice. Thank you so much. Like his help had meant something. Like he had meant something beyond fear and power. He drained the whiskey in one swallow. Outside, the city glittered with 1,000 lives he'd never touch, never know, never save. He'd stopped for one. And the guilt, the thing he didn't do, was starting to feel a lot like regret. The post went live at 2:47 a.m. Amina was asleep when Sadiq uploaded it, a carefully constructed narrative wrapped in righteous anger and half-truths that spread like gasoline on fire. My wife was begging men on the street while pregnant. A stranger helped her, paid thousands for her hospital bills. She won't tell me who he is. Now she's home with a baby I'm not even sure is mine. I'm asking for prayers and advice. I don't know what to do. By morning, it had 3,000 shares. By noon, the comments had turned venomous. She was probably cheating. That's why the guy paid. Men don't pay for strangers. He's the real father. She looks unstable in those photos. Someone should check on that baby. Photos Sadiq had taken while she slept, Amina looking exhausted, hair unwashed, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Photos cropped and filtered to make her look unhinged instead of exhausted. She didn't know about any of it until Mrs. Okoro from downstairs knocked with a phone in her hand and pity in her eyes. Child, the older woman said gently. Have you seen what your husband is saying about you? Amina's world tilted. She read the post 3 times before her hands started shaking. Read the comments until tears blurred the screen. Strangers, hundreds of them, picking apart her life, her character, her worth. Sadiq wasn't even home. He'd left early that morning without explanation. By evening, the first neighbor stopped making eye contact in the hallway. By the next day, 2 more women she'd considered friends crossed the street when they saw her coming. The landlord called on the 3rd day. I'm getting complaints, Mr. Adeyemi said, his voice tight. About noise. About instability. I need you to understand, Amina, I run a respectable building. Complaints from who? I've barely left the apartment. Multiple tenants. Anonymous reports. He paused. I'm not saying I believe them. But when Child Protective Services gets involved. Amina's blood went cold. What? Someone filed a report. Said the baby might be in an unsafe environment. They'll probably come by to check. His tone softened slightly. I'm sorry. I hope it's all a misunderstanding. The line went dead. Amina stood frozen, Rafiq sleeping peacefully in her arms, completely unaware that the world was closing in around them. She checked her phone with trembling hands. The post had spread beyond Sadiq's page now, picked up by gossip accounts, shared in community groups, dissected by strangers who'd never met her but had already decided who she was. Unstable. Unfaithful. Unfit. Her inbox flooded with messages. Some concerned. Most cruel. Your baby deserves better. Women like you make me sick. God sees everything. She wanted to defend herself. To explain. But every word would be twisted, screenshotted, weaponized. So she stayed silent. and the silence made her look guilty. That night, Sadiq came home smelling like cheap cologne and victory. "People are worried about you," he said, feigning concern that didn't reach his eyes. "Maybe you should talk to someone. A professional." "You did this," Amina whispered. "You're destroying me. I'm protecting our family." He moved closer. "You brought a stranger into our lives. What was I supposed to do, just accept that some rich man paid for everything out of kindness?" He laughed bitterly. "You're naive, Amina. Dangerous naive. I told you what happened. You told me a story. I posted the truth." She wanted to scream. To fight. But Rafiq was sleeping, and the walls were thin, and anything she did would become more ammunition. Sadiq's phone buzzed. He checked it, smiled faintly, then pocketed it without explanation. Amina had seen that smile before. It was the one he wore when he thought he'd won something. "Who are you talking to?" she asked. "People who can help us." He grabbed his jacket. "People who know how the world really works." What does that mean? But he was already out the door. Amina didn't sleep that night. She held Rafiq and watched the shadows move across the ceiling, feeling the walls press closer with every hour. Feeling hunted by an enemy she couldn't see, an algorithm, a mob, a system that devoured women like her and called it justice. Somewhere in the city, Sadiq was making calls to men whose names she didn't know. Trading information about a black sedan and a white suit for cash and connections he thought would elevate him. He had no idea he was dealing with people who considered him an insect. People who'd already flagged his activity and reported it up the chain. People who worked for Yijun. At 3 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Firm. Official. Final. Amina's heart stopped. She checked the peephole and saw two women in business attire holding clipboards and ID badges she recognized immediately. Child Protective Services. Behind them, a police officer stood silent, hand resting on his belt. And somewhere across the city, Yijun's phone lit up with a single message from Jihan. "The husband is talking. And they've come for her baby." They were polite about it. That was the worst part. The social worker's name was Ms. Adebayo. She had kind eyes and a soft voice and a clipboard that might as well have been a guillotine. "Mrs. Hassan, we've received multiple reports expressing concern for your child's welfare," she said, standing in the doorway like she had every right to be there. "We need to conduct a welfare check." Amina's arms tightened around Rafiq instinctively. "He's fine. He's healthy. We just came from the hospital 3 days ago." "We're not saying he isn't," Ms. Adebayo interrupted gently. "But the reports mention environmental concerns, mental instability, and potential neglect. We're required by law to investigate." "Mental instability?" Amina's voice cracked. "I'm not unstable. I just had a baby. I'm tired, but I'm taking care of him. May we come in?" It wasn't really a question. The second social worker, younger, harder-edged, was already scanning the apartment with clinical detachment. The dishes in the sink. The laundry piled on the chair. The exhaustion baked into every corner of the small space. Evidence of a new mother barely surviving. But through their eyes, it looked like something else. The police officer remained in the doorway. Silent. Watching. "When did you last sleep?" Ms. Adebayo asked. "I don't know. Maybe yesterday." "He wakes up every 2 hours. And your husband? Where is he?" Amina's throat tightened. "I don't know. He left this morning." The two social workers exchanged a glance. The younger one made a note. "Mrs. Hassan, have you been experiencing thoughts of harming yourself or your baby?" "What?" "No. Never. Because multiple witnesses have reported concerning behavior. Erratic posts online. Public distress. Isolation from your support system. Those posts weren't from me." Amina's voice rose. Rafiq stirred in her arms, letting out a small whimper. She rocked him instinctively, trying to keep him calm. "My husband posted those. He's lying. He's trying to." Mrs. Hassan, I need you to calm down. I am calm. But she wasn't. Panic was rising in her chest like water filling her lungs. The younger social worker stepped closer. We're going to need to take the baby into temporary protective custody while we complete our investigation. The words didn't make sense at first. Amina blinked. What? Just for 72 hours, Ms. Adebayo said, her tone meant to soothe but landing like a slap. To ensure his safety while we assess the situation. No. Amina backed away, clutching Rafiq tighter. No, you can't. He's mine. He's safe. I'm keeping him safe. Mrs. Hassan. No. Her scream echoed through the apartment. Rafiq started crying, loud, frightened wails that tore through Amina's chest. The police officer stepped inside. Ma'am, you need to cooperate, he said firmly. If you resist, we'll be forced to involve additional authorities. Amina's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, sobbing, holding her son like she could somehow fuse him to her body. Make them unable to separate what shouldn't be separated. Please, she begged. Please don't take him. He needs me. He's only 3 days old. Please. Ms. Adebayo knelt beside her. Her face was sympathetic, but her hands were already reaching. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I know this is hard. Hard. The word was obscene in its inadequacy. They pried Rafiq from her arms with professional efficiency. Amina screamed, an animal sound, raw and broken. She tried to hold on, but the officer restrained her gently, pulling her back while the social workers secured the baby. Rafiq was crying. Reaching for her with tiny fists. And Amina was crying. Reaching for him with empty arms. Mama's here, she sobbed. Mama's here, baby. I love you. I love you. But they were already taking him to the door. Outside in the hallway, a neighbor had their phone out. Recording everything. When they were gone, Amina collapsed. She lay on the floor where they'd taken him, curled around the space he'd occupied, and howled. Grief and rage and helplessness poured out of her in waves that shook her entire body. The apartment was silent except for her sobs. Sadiq didn't come home. He didn't call. Hours later, when Amina finally dragged herself to her phone with shaking hands, she saw it. The video. Posted by someone she didn't even know. Unfit mother has baby taken by CPS, watch her breakdown. Already 50,000 views. The comments were worse than before. Good. That baby is safer now. She's clearly insane. This is what happens when you make bad choices. Amina watched herself scream on a stranger's phone. Watched herself become entertainment. Watched her worst moment turned into content for people who would forget her by tomorrow. She turned off the phone. Sat in the dark. And realized she had nothing left. No baby. No husband. No dignity. Just the hollow shell of a woman the world had decided wasn't worth saving. Across the city, in a sleek penthouse, Yijun's phone buzzed. Jihan's message was brief, you need to see this. The video loaded. And for the first time in a decade, Yijun felt something inside him shatter. The sound hit him first. Not the words. Not the images. The sound of Amina screaming as they took her child. Yijun stood in his office, phone in hand, watching the video Jihan had sent. His expression was stone. His body was still. But something inside him, something he'd buried so deep he'd forgotten it existed, cracked open. The video played again automatically. He watched her collapse. Watched her reach for empty air. Watched strangers reduce her agony to entertainment. 50,000 views. 500 comments. Zero humanity. Yijun set the phone down with controlled precision. His hand didn't shake. It never shook. But his knuckles were white. How long has this been online? He asked. His voice was quiet. Dangerously quiet. Jihan stood near the window, arms crossed. 4 hours. It's spreading fast. And Sadiq Hassan? Posted from an internet cafe 2 hours ago. Bragging about his connection to you. Jihan's jaw tightened. He's been selling information to anyone who'll pay. Small-time dealers. Rival gangs. Even tried reaching out to the Nakamura family. Yi Jun's eyes went cold. He used my name. He used your car, your reputation, your mercy. Sung Hyun stepped forward, tablet in hand. He's been building a narrative. Claiming you're the father. That Amina is your mistress. That you're weak, distracted, compromised. And the social services report? Dong-wook spoke from the corner, his voice flat. Anonymous tip. But we traced the IP. It came from Sadiq's phone. The room went silent. Yi Jun turned to the window, looking out over the city he controlled. A city that bent to his will, that trembled at his word, that operated under rules he'd written in blood. But none of that had protected her. None of that had stopped the world from devouring her while he stood back and pretended she was nothing. Nothing. Boss, Ji-hun said carefully. If you intervene now, you'll confirm the rumors. Every enemy we have will see it as weakness. Let them. The 2 words landed like a verdict. Sung Hyun shifted uncomfortably. You're risking everything for a woman you met once. Yi Jun turned, and the look in his eyes made Sung Hyun take a step back. I stopped on that street, Yi Jun said, his voice surgical and precise, because I made a choice. And when you make a choice in my world, you own the consequences. He moved toward the door. I left her. I walked away. And because I did, her husband sold her story, destroyed her reputation, and stole her child. That's not your fault. It is exactly my fault. Yi Jun's hand was on the handle. I knew what men like him do when they smell opportunity. I knew, and I did nothing. Ji-hun stepped forward. What do you want us to do? Yi Jun paused. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Find Sadiq Hassan. I want every lie he told documented. Every person he contacted. Every piece of evidence fabricated. His eyes were ice. I want his fraud exposed so thoroughly that even his shadow is ashamed. And then? And then we make sure he understands what happens when you weaponize mercy. Dong-wook nodded once. Consider it done. The social services case? Sung Hyun asked. I'll handle it personally. Yi Jun pulled on his jacket. Get me everything, hospital records, witness statements, surveillance footage. I want proof that woman did nothing wrong except ask for help. That'll take hours. Then you have hours. Yi Jun checked his watch. Cancel my meetings. All of them. Ji-hun's eyebrows raised. Including the Yakuza negotiation? Especially that. Boss, they'll see it as an insult. Good. Yi Jun's smile was cold and sharp. Let them be insulted. Let them wonder what's more important than their business. He opened the door. Let every enemy I have understand that I don't abandon what's mine. She's not yours, Sung Hyun said quietly. Yi Jun stopped. For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then he turned, and there was something in his expression none of them had seen before. Not rage. Not calculation. Something human. Maybe not, Yi Jun said. But I'm hers. The moment I stopped on that street, I became responsible. He straightened his cuffs. And I don't leave debts unpaid. 20 minutes later, Yi Jun stood outside Amina's apartment building. It was nearly midnight. The hallway smelled like old cooking oil and broken dreams. Paint peeled from the walls. A flickering light buzzed overhead. This was not his world. But he'd brought her back to it. He raised his hand and knocked, firm but not harsh. Inside, he heard movement. Hesitation. Then the door opened a crack. Amina stood there, eyes hollow and red from crying. Her face was swollen. Her hands trembled. She looked like someone who'd been broken and was still trying to figure out which pieces mattered. When she saw him, confusion flickered across her features. You, she whispered. I'm sorry, Yi-jun said. And for the first time in years, he meant it. I shouldn't have walked away. Amina's expression crumpled. They took him. They took my baby. I know. Yi-jun stepped closer. And I'm going to get him back. She stared at him like she didn't understand the words. Who are you? She asked, her voice breaking. Yi-jun exhaled slowly. Someone who should have protected you. Amina let him in because she had nothing left to protect. No baby to guard. No dignity to preserve. Just empty arms and a hollow chest and the crushing weight of a world that had decided she didn't deserve mercy. Yi-jun stepped inside and closed the door quietly behind him. The apartment looked like grief had moved in. Baby clothes still folded on the couch. An empty bassinet in the corner. Dishes unwashed because what was the point of eating when your child was gone? Amina stood in the middle of it all, hugging herself like she might fall apart if she let go. They said 72 hours, she whispered. But I don't think they're bringing him back. I saw the comments. Everyone thinks her voice broke. Everyone thinks I'm a bad mother. Yi-jun's jaw tightened. You're not. You don't know that. You don't know me. I know enough. She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time since he'd knocked, something sharp entered her eyes. Recognition mixed with confusion. Why are you here? She asked. You disappeared. You paid and you left and I thought, she stopped. I thought you were just being kind. I was. Then why come back now? Her voice rose slightly, pain sharpening into something like anger. Why show up after they've already destroyed me? Yi-jun didn't answer immediately. He moved to the center of the room and did something that would have shocked every man who worked for him. He knelt. Not fully. Not like submission. But enough that they were eye level. Enough that the gesture said what words couldn't. I see you. I failed you. I'm here now. Because I made a mistake, he said quietly. I helped you and then I walked away. I told myself it was safer that way. For both of us. His eyes met hers. I was wrong. Safe from what? Amina's voice trembled. Who are you? Yi-jun exhaled slowly. Someone dangerous. The word hung between them. Dangerous how? In ways you don't need to understand. But dangerous enough that when your husband recognized my car, he decided to use you as leverage. Yi-jun's voice hardened. He posted lies online. Filed false reports. Spread your story to people who would twist it into something ugly. Amina's hands went to her mouth. Sadiq did that? All of it. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Why? Money. Attention. A misguided belief that connecting himself to me would give him power. Yi-jun's expression was ice. He was wrong. And my baby is safe, Yi-jun interrupted firmly. And by tomorrow morning, he'll be back in your arms. Amina stared at him like he'd spoken a language she didn't know. How can you possibly? Because I can. Simple. Final. True. Her legs gave out. She sank onto the couch, shaking her head. I don't understand any of this. I don't understand you. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Her voice cracked. Strangers don't do what you're doing. They don't pay hospital bills. They don't show up at midnight promising to fix the unfixable. Who are you?